My inner critic, my own doubt, was a monster telling me I was not enough. And that's kind of what brought me to my healing journey, my awakening journey. For me, it wasn't so much the external systems or the external people. It was my own internal voice was my biggest conflict. I think radical responsibility has been such a game changer for me, and especially for folks who have ADHD or neurodivergent. Our shame and guilt is heightened. We're typically very highly sensitive people and very, very emotional and empathetic. And while that can be a huge strength, it can also cause strain on our bodies. There's this beautiful Zen story called the two arrows, where it says the first arrow of suffering is inevitable, but that second arrow can be shifted and changed. That second arrow is the story that we replay. And a lot of the research is on neuroplasticity and how we can actually rewire our brains and our beliefs. And so if we've had a belief for a very, very long time, it's a pattern. If we disrupt that pattern and tell it a new story and offer evidence, we're creating neuroplasticity in our brain to believe that new story so that we can feel better about ourselves. You cannot hack yourself out of not sleeping. You cannot hack yourself out of not eating or overindulging in processed foods. There is no supplement to take that out. You have to make those micro choices that are good for you, and you have to be willing to be honest enough with yourself for that.
Welcome to the Mind, Body, Spirit podcast. I'm here with Radha Dalal. She's a marriage and family therapist. She's the owner and founder of Pink Rose Wellness, and she's been helping many people on that transformation journey. So I appreciate having you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into your awakening journey and just kind of take the viewers through your awakening journey, and then what really served as the impetus to you starting your business and helping transform people. I know you're working a lot with people with neurodivergent characteristics such as ADHD, procrastination, people-pleasing patterns. We'll probably dive into a lot of that today, but if you want to take us from there, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for having me. I feel like for me growing up, I grew up in a very, sheltered family. I have an older brother. I'm the youngest. I'm Indian. I'm South Asian. Grew up in California. It's a Cali girl. I live in Dallas now. But I grew up very, very supported, very, very sheltered. A lot of diversity, and a lot of things were given to me. So I had a lot of blessings. But it was also like specific things were given to me. It was almost like I was boxed in. It was like, oh, like, okay, so you're a girl. Okay, so then you dance. Okay, so this is what you do. It was kind of like a path was given to me, which wasn't all bad, but it also kind of created conflict within myself. It created a lot of shame and guilt, which I didn't have the words for back then. But my brother is amazing, and we have a great relationship now. But my brother is 6 years older than me. And, he, went to UPenn, went to Caltech, has a PhD, has, like very golden child, very respectable, just like perfect on all the marks, especially for an Indian family. And that kind of was not me. I didn't necessarily have those grades or go to that type of college. And yes, like now I have 2 master's degrees and certifications and, all of these things. But I think growing up, there was a huge part of me that just never felt like I was enough. Whether it was in front of my family, whether it was with friends, whether it was to society. And it was really funny because I say I was sheltered, I was supported, I was loved. I genuinely was. My parents are actually very modern, and they didn't have I guess, the typical expectations of me. They actually wanted me to be happy, and they want me to be happy, but my inner critic, my own doubt was a monster and just kind of just kept telling me I was not enough. And that's kind of what brought me to my healing journey, my awakening journey. And I don't think I'm fully awake. I think it's an ongoing process and an ongoing journey for me. But I realized for me, it wasn't so much the external systems or the external people. It was my own internal voice was my biggest conflict. And when I learned the names and the theories around it and how to start shifting some of that language, that's when I started becoming more of myself. That's when I started being more interested in affirmations and even more connected to my culture. For us, we use the word mantra. Man means mind, tra means transcend. And so when you're speaking certain mantras, prayers, if you belong to any community or religion, you're speaking the same prayers your ancestors spoke several years ago, eons ago, the same exact prayers over and over and over. And so you're actually attaching to that frequency where you're able to transcend. And it just kind of like blew my mind that this was something that, while affirmation and spirituality is trending right now, I think that's wonderful and fantastic. But it's something I grew up with. That was part of my life. Every Friday we would do these mantras, these prayers. We would have this sense of community. We would have shared spaces to eat, to have food, to celebrate. We would have people who cared about us and wanted to talk to us and ask how we were doing. And I think that sense of community and support was always there for me, and I'm very grateful and blessed. But I had a block, and that block made me feel inferior. For me, it wasn't my parents making me feel bad or my brother making me feel bad. I was making me feel bad. And I find that I think it's different for everyone, but I find that a common thread I see with a lot of clients I see, especially older Gen Z and millennials, is we keep getting in our way. We keep self-sabotaging. We keep adding things to our plate instead of delegating or asking for help. You know, we, I'm a huge fan of wellness, and wellness is amazing, but I don't think we have to make everything aesthetically pleasing or have to make everything to post on Instagram or you don't need to buy something or take something outside of yourself. I really think it's that internal landscape. And I think starting with just words and silence and maybe a little bit of movement, music, wiggles, I think that is enough.
Yeah, it's interesting because our cells are responding to light and sound. So I would imagine just mantras are having some type of cellular effect, just like our speech would. So if you're going through certain things and you're raised by parents that actually did a great job, and you still have those lingering thoughts that say, I'm not enough. I'm wondering, what do you think that was shaped by? It was because it sounds like your parents really didn't cause that. Perhaps it was societal expectations. Perhaps it's just a negative voice in each and every one of our minds that we have to transcend. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that's something I've been searching for and continue to search for. And, we can name it, generational trauma. We can name it systems. We can name it epigenetics. We can name it the inner critic. I think there is this thread of this inner critic, this doubt that all of us have. And I just think for some of us, it's louder, or we go through seasons of when it's louder. And I don't think you could have the most perfect family, right? Like I had, I don't think my parents are perfect, but they genuinely love me and put me and my brother first. Now they put their grandkids first, right? Like they genuinely have this desire. Like that is what they live for and their joy comes from. Um, and even with that, there's still, do I deserve that type of love? Like, what did I do to deserve that? Right. I think there is that little bit of doubt. And I don't know why we have it. I don't know if it's part of the survivorship, how our brain, as much as we've evolved as society from hunter and gatherers, our brains are still wired for survivorship. And I think it's a little bit of that with a little bit of, generations of, my culture. I was not part of this, but my ancestors, going through famine, going through like severe heat, going through poverty. My dad grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment with 4 siblings where they didn't have a bathroom. It was like a shared bathroom and they would have to go to a different floor to use the restroom and you would have to wait in line to use the restroom. Um, and so I don't know if it comes from that. Um, I think that's a really good question. And I think we could spend, like for me, months and years trying to figure out why. Or what I'm trying to lean into is it's just something that's there that I don't have to listen to.
And how can we interact with that inner critic and develop like a better relationship with it, where it allows us to transcend some of the issues that we're experiencing, not necessarily to fix ourselves, but really just to align with that highest version of ourselves?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think if there's a desire, I always backtrack it. If that's something that you genuinely want to shift and change, you can. Because when you have that desire that comes inside from you, you are going to find ways to make it work. And one way that you can do that is something that, your audience may already be aware of is, naming that part, naming that doubt, naming that inner critic. Sometimes we give it a name that may sound, um, quote unquote, like ugly, like Cruella or something, and like talk it out like, hey, I know you're trying to protect me. I know you want to keep me safe. I know you want to make sure I look good. But right now, that sounds more like anger than a fact. And I really want to look at the facts right now. I think talking, I'm a huge voice note girly. I'm a huge person that needs to soundboard and talk it out. And so just like having that conversation, that communication of like, wait a minute, that's that's actually not true. That's like, like my parents actually love me, or actually my parents want me to be safe. Actually, that doesn't mean anything about me. That means something about that person that's insecure. I think when we start to say things out loud, we can kind of decipher and discern what is actually true. And truth has a frequency. And I think when you can slow down, talk it out, and really utilize that internal landscape, that intuition, that discernment, you can kind of realize you can start to take responsibility for what you own, not take shame, not take guilt, take responsibility for what you own and learn what can be changed, if anything can be changed.
I know that's one of your key pillars. It's like the radical responsibility. Is there anything you would want to share on that? Just how you move through? I think it's radiance, and then what's the other R for the
Resilience.
resilience? So if you want to take us through those, because I would imagine that's a big part of your likely one-on-one sessions with clients and taking them through that. So if you could explain that for the viewers, that'd be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. I think radical responsibility has been such a game changer for me, and especially for folks who have ADHD or neurodivergent. Our shame and guilt is heightened. We're typically very highly sensitive people and very, very emotional and empathetic. And while that can be a huge strength, it can also cause strain on our bodies through fatigue, through exhaustion, through over personalization. And what radical responsibility means for me, I really allow the client to define what it means for them. And we have this conversation. But what it means for me today is not blaming myself. It means taking responsibility. So something as simple as I said I was going to wake up at 7 a.m. and I woke up at 7:30. Am I going to spend the rest of the day beating myself up for waking up at 7:30? Or am I going to look at what worked and what didn't work? Okay, I slept later. I didn't set my alarm. I was scrolling, whatever it was, instead of like just blaming and shaming myself, I can take responsibility and take better actions. Things are not, I would love for things to always go to plan, but things are not going to go to plan. Things are going to change. Things are going to shift. And so when we can look at, hey, let me take ownership. Let me take responsibility versus I'm a bad person now. I'm horrible. I'm never going to wake up on time. I'm not a good wife. I'm not a good puppy mom. I'm not a good, like, you can go on this huge spiral, and taking that radical responsibility brings you back to the present moment and brings you back to what you can control. So that would be part one. Part two, that's also part one for the radical responsibility, is also the foundation. It's like we're a building, right? We need to have a very strong foundation that our building can hold up, right? So if we have big dreams, if we have big ambitions, we need the capacity and the foundation to hold all of that, right? All of the good, all of the bad, all of the duality, all of the conflict, right? If we want to have a family and we want to go on vacations and we want to go on trips and we want to live in a nice house, we have to have the capacity to have uncomfortable conversations. We have to have the capacity to have discipline, right? And so that is what radical responsibility means for me. And radiance, to me, that second step as we continue to build up is that joy, that playfulness. Discipline is important, but we also need flexibility. And, where can I have more fun in my day? Where can I have joy? I think our hustle culture has beat us down on so many levels of we're keeping up with the Joneses or we're keeping up with society. And, we need to have this hack and this product. And, we also need to go on a 7-day vacation in Bora Bora. And then after that, we need 2 weeks to recover from the vacation in Bora Bora. I think radiance is really about the simplicity, that inner light, and really being able to talk to ourselves, what is within my capacity? What is within my capacity to bring me joy, to fill my cup? And again, it goes back to the basics. Our ancestors have done this for many years. Music, storytelling, dance, all of that is healing. And yes, now we have the science and the data to prove all of that, which is great and wonderful. And the simple things work, right? A lot of my clients who have ADHD, or a lot of my clients that are highly anxious, when they're in that erratic state, they're not breathing, right? They're tense. They're talking super, super fast. I could also talk very fast as well, but their heartbeat is up. And what slows that down is breath. Right? So even with my 5-year-olds that I'm working with, we may not be doing breath work and putting your hand over your heart and, inhaling for 4 and holding for 4 and exhaling for 4. We might be blowing bubbles, right? We might be like pretending we're blowing out birthday candles. We might be doing something a little different, but we're encouraging that breath to slow down. And that is what radiance is about. It's about looking at yourself within, slowing down, and being with yourself in the present moment. There's this beautiful Zen story called the 2 arrows, where it says the first arrow of suffering is inevitable, but that second arrow can be shifted and changed. That second arrow is the story that we replay over and over: the breakup, the shame, the conflict, the argument, the I can't believe I wore that. That's the second arrow. That's what we can shift. And that's what radiance allows us to do is we can feel it in our body. We can use the somatic practices. But after 90 seconds, it becomes a memory and you're only re-inflicting that memory onto you where you are inflicting that self-suffering. And so that is radiance. That was a lot of me talking, so I apologize.
No, I love everything you said. So yeah, continue.
And then the third is resilience. I think resilience, I think of radical responsibility, radiance and resilience as more as a cycle. It's not linear. There is no end point or no finish point. I love to say and hate to say it, it's a journey. It's a daily practice. And resilience is kind of that space of like, I have my foundation. I I feel strong. I have my radiance. I'm able to look within. And resilience is even when you're resilient and even when you are doing all the right things, life can bring us challenges, right? Whether it's fertility, whether it's a loss, whether it's a medical condition, whether it's the state of the world, right? It is being able to look within and find comfort and soothing in, prayer and affirmations, in whatever it is that allows you to have that sense of hope. And nothing is ever going to be perfect. There is no such thing as perfection, but resilience allows you to just build on what is working for you and have that community support. I think there is such a lack of connection, a lack of disconnection. A lot of couples I see, they crave quality time with their partner. They might have quantity time. Maybe they both work from home and maybe they have dinner together, but they're on their cell phones or they're watching TV or they're talking about the roof or their daughter's Kumon. They're not actually connecting and having that emotional intimacy. And I think resilience allows you to have that community connection where you look at someone in the eyes when you spend time with them in person. When, I'm aging myself, but when I was growing up, my parents would look at me like, if it was before 6 o'clock, like, why are you home? Like, why aren't you playing outside? It was like, why are you here? They would be super confused, and they would be able to see me, or my grandpa lived with us, that he would be watching me from outside, but they would be like, why are you home? Like, it was just weird to be at home during the day and not playing outside. And I think that's what a resilience allows us to do, is to actually enjoy that community time. I love self-care. I'm a huge fan of self-care, but self-care doesn't need to be done alone. It can be done with friends. It can be done with family. It can be done in community. And I think that's what resilience allows us to do. And then we go back to radical responsibility. Where are there cracks in my foundation? Can I repair? And it's just this continual cycle that we navigate through.
That's amazing. It's because there's always different ways of speaking about these things. But what I'd like to hone in on there is for any couples listening, um, any strategies to improve that sense of connection and the emotional resiliency you were speaking about. What methods would you suggest for people out there?
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like, what I see, and I always say it's very individualistic to a certain degree. It's really asking yourself what you want, why you want it. And outside of that, if I were to generalize, it would be put your phone away. Like, I think the best thing you can do is put your phone away, and, like, have a system. Like, you know, I'm a huge believer you don't need more willpower. You need a better system. Put the phone in a drawer in another room. It's very unlikely you're gonna go and grab your phone, right? But if your phone is right next to you or in your hand, your phone is designed to capture your attention. That is what your phone does. That is what it's meant to do. That is what social media does. And I'm a huge fan of social media. It is great. But you have to ask yourself, am I using social media or is social media using me? Right? And so we have to remove that stimuli, especially for those of us who are neurodivergent or have ADHD. It's very, very difficult to avoid that stimuli. So put it away. So I would say have a dedicated time, right? As much I know there's a lot of trending advice around date night. Yes, do a date night at home. Put your phone away. Actually look at your partner in their eyes and spend time with them. Talk to them about them. Talk to them about yourself, not about, I keep saying the roof. We got roof work done. So just thinking about the roof, but not about the roof, not about the rug you want to buy, not about something else. Talk about you. Give yourself permission to be vulnerable and be with your partner and actually listen. A lot of times people tell me, like, don't you get tired of talking? And because I provide therapy and coaching, and I'm like, you'd be surprised how little talking I do in a session. It's more about listening. It's more about holding space. It's more about asking questions. My client already knows what to do. They have all the solutions with them. I am there to guide and hold space and hold support. They are the master of their life.
100%. Yeah, it's I often tell myself and others, I'm not a healer. I'm just here to hold space for others to heal. So it's just one of those things that we kind of we're always on our phone. We're always just doing things that are distracting us. And I'd like to get into the storytelling element because I think you focus on the narrative therapy. Is that where that storytelling element comes in?
Yeah.
So you mentioned some research. Could you just talk about that storytelling element, just with that research and how that can create such strong transformation in the human?
Yeah, absolutely. The way our mind works through narrative therapy is, or the way our beliefs work are stories, right? It's stories like, for me, I'm spoiled, or my brother's smart, I'm the cute one, right? We are kind of just told, internally and externally stories. And these stories are really, beliefs are really just stories we've told ourselves over and over and over again. And so what narrative therapy does and believes, it believes that you, the client, is not the problem. It is the story. And can we externalize that problem? And can we reframe that story utilizing evidence and words, right? So for me, in my story of, you know, that doubt that I'm not good enough, why is that true? Is that true? How is that true? What makes that true? And look for stories where and evidence where, hey, I am good enough, right? I'm good enough because I have breath in me. I'm good enough because I'm alive. There is, I don't have to prove my worth, just like I wouldn't expect my 5-year-old niece to prove her worth for love. I deserve that same type of love, right? And so kind of reframing. And a lot of the research is on neuroplasticity and how we can actually rewire our brains and our beliefs. And so if we've had a belief for a very, very long time, it's it's a pattern, right? If we disrupt that pattern and tell it a new story, and offer evidence, we're creating neuroplasticity in our brain to believe that new story so that we can feel better about ourselves, so we can have confidence, so that we can release some of that shame and guilt. And it's allowing us to believe in a narrative that we are inherently good, right? I think there's a lot of noise outside on society and how everything is falling apart. And, you know, while there is evidence pointing to that, there's also evidence in there's a lot of people out there that want to do good. There's a lot of people that want to serve. There's a lot of people that really value kindness and community. And so as much as politics um, wants to divide us on our differences, we actually have much more in common than we have differences. And so the research indicates while telling ourselves stories that are healthy, positive for our brain, especially in the world of positive psychology, we can actually focus on that and create more of that.
Yeah, it sounds like coming together as communities and telling these stories. I mean, that's a strong thing shaping what we're bringing into creation right now. We're just trying to create a sacred space. I'm working with multiple collaborators right now, but we'll have like in-person retreats in the South Florida area, likely around the United States here soon. But it's really the storytelling element is key. And if you've heard of Peter Crone, he is the mind architect, and he listens to people's stories, and they feel seen. They feel like they're being understood for the first time, and then he's often asking them a question, and it's shifting the perspective, but it's like once that limiting belief comes up, it's like, where does that exist? Does it exist in your DNA? Likely not. It's existing in your mind. And that mind is a space where it can be a fertile ground for the more empowered, more aligned, more joyful, more loving, accepting version of yourself, or it can be the negative aspects and all the things that we look at society and we say, man, there's a lot wrong with the world today. But again, it's shifting that perspective to, hey, I acknowledge what's going on, but at the same time, I'm going to put my energy and my focus towards community and sharing stories and empowering each other. So that's it's a beautiful journey that we're on, and I'd like to shift into the neurodivergence and just ways of working with that community, what you're typically seeing in that community. I know, so I had ADHD as a child, and I was put on the medications. I got off the medications, and now focus is my strong suit. It's just when I get on that phone, that's when it goes downhill. That's when I'm pulled in. So if you want to
Yeah.
just share any information you have on that, that'd be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. It's interesting because ADHD shows up differently in females, especially younger girls, than boys. And ADHD now, I think, is even more prevalent because we have so many distractions in our society. And I'm also not surprised that focus is now your strength because hyper focus is also a part of ADHD. ADHD can be a superpower when harnessed with the right support um, and tools that work for the individual. I would say what I see a lot is a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and a lot of lack of focus. I think a lot of clients think they just need more willpower. I think I mentioned this earlier, more willpower to write their essay or get through their work tasks or, clean a part of their house or even their whole house, right? There could be like very messy. Maybe it's May and they still have like their Christmas tree up or, you know, different things like that. And they think they're bad because they're not productive enough, right? We live in hustle culture where we love to be burned out and work 80-hour work weeks and, all this kind of stuff. Whereas the truth is, it's just kind of working with your brain instead of against your brain. And first is acknowledgement, right? We live in a society with a lot of distractions, like I said. So I did a presentation for Headspace in 2023. So I would have to look at the data again. But what we had found during that time is that both you and I don't know what your phone usage is like, Tim, but with our WhatsApp groups, our Facebook, our Reddit, whatever it is, we are bombarded with information, right? So the amount of information you and I intake in one single day is the same amount of information someone during Shakespearean time experienced in their entire lifetime. So we have to acknowledge that we are inundated with a lot of information. You're scrolling on Facebook, you can see a pregnancy announcement, a wedding announcement, a death announcement, a job promotion, to like a pet, to various milestones, to someone talking about candy, right? Like it's the whole spectrum. So we're inundated with so much information. Of course, it's going to be hard to focus. Of course, it's going to be hard to do one thing at a time, right? And so I really like to validate that point because I think we just think that, oh, we can manage social media better or we can manage our phone better. And the truth is, Steve Jobs, who invented the iPad and all the stuff at Apple, he didn't give his children the iPad because he knew how distracting and how much attention it can take away from them. So I think first we have to acknowledge that. And second, we need to find systems that work for us. And so if we need to focus, right? If one of our goals is to focus, we need to remove and shift the stimuli in our environment so that we can focus, right? I think a lot of the behavior techniques for ADHD work when it's body doubling, having someone else there while you're doing a task or doing a task with you, right? Using those timers, setting a timer where you're only going to do one thing at a time for 5 minutes. Give yourself permission to start with just 5 minutes. And I think I think acknowledging removes the layer of shame and guilt, which allows you to find the action, whether it's body doubling, whether it's timers, whether it's going to a coffee shop, to find the actions that you need so that you can focus, so that you can manage your time, so that you can complete these quote unquote basic tasks at a pace that makes sense to you. I think what the guilt and shame is like, I need to do as much as X person and Y person. You need to do what you need to do, right? And sometimes with neurodivergence, with depression, sometimes that's brushing your teeth and taking a shower, right? I think another part, I'm kind of jumping around with neurodivergence, is we don't want to start where we are. A lot of my clients want to eat healthier and have better meal plans, but they're eating out 5 times a week and they want to go from eating out 5 times a week to eating at home 5 times a week or cooking at home 5 times a week. I would say start with one healthy snack, one healthy meal. I would say start small and actually meet yourself where you are. Start where you are, and that's how you create real sustainable change. If I'm at point 1 and I'm trying to start at 57, that's going to create a whole lot of shame, a whole lot of guilt, and I'm not going to have any success. But if I build from 1 to 2 to 3, from 1 healthy snack to 2 healthy snacks, to cooking 1 meal at home, to adding it on rotation to 2 meals at home, by month 3, I could have a full-on meal plan with food I actually like to eat that is made at home, and I can be really proud of that. And I think that's a huge part of ADHD and neurodivergence is people don't want to start where they are They want to start where they want to be.
It seems to bring up stuff from the New Year's resolution crowd where you see the gyms are super packed, right at January 1st, and then it starts to dwindle down by March. And in meeting people where they are seems to be a topic that you like to focus on. What does that mean to you? And then how can people, it sounds like they're just taking these smaller steps that are more actionable and maybe having SMART goals attached to that. And in maybe not looking at the outcome and thinking, oh, I failed that. But no, I'm just, again, coming back to radical responsibility. Maybe I shifted off course here, but that's not necessarily wrong. That's just where I'm at. And having acceptance, because what is, it just is. There's no way of changing that beyond your next choice. So it doesn't really help to think, oh man, what if I did this? What if I exercised more? What if I ate healthier? And oh man, I just had a Taco Bell meal. Oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be eating all of these meals at home. So yeah, if you want to take us through what it really means to meet people where they are, and steps that they could take to make that journey a little bit smoother.
Yeah. I have 2 master's degrees and several certifications, and I'm such a huge fan of learning. I'm very curious. And even though I'm sharing this, there is still a part of me that's like, I need to know more. I need to know more. I need to have another certification. And when I have the certification, it's going to be amazing. And then I actually gone to a training 2 weeks ago on brain spotting, and it was wonderful. And for those who are not familiar, it's kind of like a sister of EMDR therapy. Um, and as I was in this training, I realized this was just another term for timeline meditation that I provided. And I was talking to one of my supervisors about this. I was like, you know, I have 2 master's degrees. I've worked with various populations. Even before I was a therapist, I worked in psychosocial support. I worked with children and families affected by hospitalization, specifically cancer. I'd run sibling support groups. I worked with moms. My whole goal was to improve medical compliance in the hospital. Um, I don't like needles. Adults don't like needles, but kids definitely do not like needles and procedures, and it's very scary. So I would provide medical play. I'd bring in Spider-Man and, pet therapy, and we'd blow bubbles and play Jenga and make the hospital fun and safe. Um, because if they feel safe, they're more likely to be medically compliant, which then improves treatment goals. So, going back to my conversation with my supervisor, I was like, sometimes I feel like I need to get another certification, but I don't really see what's different between this theory, between brain spotting and this meditation. And brain spotting is great. That's not my point. But she's like, there's this book called Common Things. And basically every theory has a common thread. But the most important thread that you can have with your therapy client is a therapeutic relationship. And that therapeutic relationship is that alliance, that trust, meeting the client where they are. And so I could have the best theories and the best worksheets and the best certifications and the best modality. All of that's wonderful and great and icing on the cake. But what is most important is being able to see and hear your client for what they're saying and what they're not saying. And that is what I believe, meeting the client where they're at. Sometimes clients come and they're like, I'm really upset. I'm really upset about my financial goals. I'm really upset about my financial goals. And underneath that, 3 years later, after they have finally built this trust with you, doesn't always have to take 3 years, but it can take 3 years. You realize there's something underneath around intimacy, around, accepting a part of themselves, accepting something in their partner. You find out that as much as I talk about radical responsibility, people are not honest with themselves. So how can we expect them to be honest with us? Right. And so I think meeting the client where they're at, building that therapeutic relationship gives them space to be really honest about what's actually happening behind closed doors. And that's when the real work and the real therapy magic, the real coaching magic, the real healing magic can happen when people feel safe enough to be honest. And that's what I think meeting the person where they're at is about.
And would you say that's a key to nervous system regulation, having that sense of like safety and security, as if you just look at this from a sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system response, you've got your, fight or flight. Most organisms are not meant to be in that for
Freeze,
very
yeah.
long durations of time, and freeze is interwoven within that. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, it's like that rest and digest, and okay, I'm actually recovering and rejuvenating, and that's where a lot of the healing takes place. But and the breath is typically going to regulate that process, likely through the vagus nerve, and just slowing down your heart rate and everything that entails. So I'm wondering, how can people kind of move through the stresses of life and come back into that parasympathetic, that rest and digest response? Um, any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think safety is so important. Psychological safety, physical safety, all safety is so important. It's something that I believe we can learn to cultivate for ourselves in most circumstances. Um, and it's a privilege that we have to feel safe. Unfortunately, it's a privilege. It should be a given. Um, but absolutely, I think the more you're able to regulate your nervous system, 2 minutes of quality breathing activates the parasympathetic state in your brain, the relaxation state, the digestion state. And the more that we're able to practice that, the easier it becomes to heal and to be honest with ourselves. And so that's a huge part of the screens, right? We want to multitask and do so many things at a time. But if we can do one thing at a time, if we can eat without a screen, even if it's 5 bites, can we really chew and bite and notice the food and be with our food? Can we really breathe and slow down for 2 minutes? That's going to activate the parasympathetic state, regulate our nervous system so we can feel safe, right? Outside of that survivorship, outside of that fight or flight, outside of that freeze, outside of that fawning, can we actually just be, you know, a human being versus a human doing? And I think that really, really helps people slow down. I think folks who have kids, um, they're able to slow down with their kids, right? Because their kids want attention and they want play and they want that time. And, I think that's something like my favorite part of working with kids is they bring you back to the present moment. They just, they just do. They just have this magic in them that allows you to do that. And I think as we've grown older, we've lost a little bit of that magic with some of our responsibilities. And I think there are many ways to regulate your nervous system. I don't think there's just one way. I find, for me, having a variety of ways that I can pick and choose from helps. Dance, music, spending time in nature. All of those things are very easy for me to get back to the present moment. Um, and I think that is a huge part of like you. I don't think you need to be regulated every second of every minute of the day. I don't know if that's possible in our society, but I think there are ways to get back to it and be in there more often than not.
Yeah, it's almost like in the kind of nutrition world, it's like if 90% of your choices came from whole foods that come from the earth, and maybe 10%, maybe you're having that cookie, maybe you're having the ice cream. But, if somebody's eating 90% junk food, it's that switch to, oh, I'm only going to eat 10% junk food. That's such a huge shift. And the hustle culture on top of it and the different things. People want to look beautiful. People want to be intelligent. And it's all of these things that are having an impact. But I think it really comes back to just doing the simple things and like coming back to simplicity and developing those systems that actually work. And I think getting off the phone is a huge part of that, especially when you're eating those meals, especially when you're with your family, especially when you hang out with your children. It's like, don't get on your phone. It's play with them, like actually enjoy. And it's coming back to that like childlike nature
Yeah,
that it's funny because when we're adults, we just want to become children again. But when we're
yeah,
children, we just want to become adults. And it's this interesting dynamic there. So I'm wondering, a lot of people are experiencing like burnout and disconnection. Would you say that's partially to blame with that hustle culture and that kind of go, 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 nervous system's always on, let's put that, pedal
yeah.
to the metal, it's on gas, and we're never in the present moment. Um, are there any other things that you see within society why people are burnt out and disconnected? And then how can we move away from that more towards balance and homeostasis?
Yeah. I think there's a financial crisis and economic crisis affecting several people. And I think there are system issues. And so, people are worried about food and making rent and paying their bills. And so that is very stressful, especially if you have a family, especially if you have kids, especially if you want them to have a better future. So I think that that stress is real and valid. Um, and I think two things can be true at the same time. I think living in that stress isn't going to, or worrying about that stress isn't going to change the outcome. I think we have to find simple things that work for us. And I think ways of doing that is looking at what is sustainable, right? Is it 5 minutes to yourself? Is it 5 minutes with your child doing rainbow breathing? If you're already watching a lot of TV and a lot of YouTube, throw in a meditation, throw in a yoga, throw in a frequency, throw in kids yoga, throw in, I'm a huge fan of rainbow breath. Like, if you're already doing something, just see if you can shift it 1%, 2%, 3% better for your health, right? I think if you live in a state right now, I'm in Dallas and I don't know why it's raining, but it's raining. But if it's like sunny outside, spend time in the sun, right? Like enjoy the rays of the sun, put your feet in the grass. I think it is these simple things. If you work a very sedentary job, get up and wiggle, throw a dance party, move your body. I've worked with healers and I've worked with psychiatrists and I've worked with therapists and I've worked with coaches, both, as a client, both as a colleague in several capacities. We're all saying the same things. If you decide to go the medication route and that is needed and supported with you, every time I've had a psychiatrist recommend a medication, they want you to pair that with therapy. They want you to pair that with hydration. They want you to pair that with movement. They want you to walk 20 minutes a day, right? And that is something that's pretty accessible for most people, is to walk 20 minutes a day. If you can't walk outside, walk around your counter, walk up and down your stairs, get a walking pad, find what works for you. There's nothing new to say. It's actually just doing what you already know is going to help you, right? And it is sleeping, quality sleep. It is eating your lunches on time. It is managing your stress. And it is slowing down enough to listen to the whispers of your soul. And I think that those are the basic things that I think every coach, every healer, every therapist, every psychiatrist is telling us in their own shape or form. You cannot hack yourself out of not sleeping. You cannot hack yourself out of not eating or overindulging in processed foods. There is no supplement to take that out. You have to make those micro choices that are good for you, and you have to be willing to be honest enough with yourself for that.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of practitioners, they focus on like the action steps, and often that first step is those thoughts and beliefs behind our choices, behind our actions. And perhaps it's reflecting on those choices of, I want to shift my nutrition. What are some small changes that I can make? And what's my current reflection on nutrition itself? Like, what do I think about healthy foods? And as you kind of go into that, you just start to discover a little bit more about yourself, and you're able to kind of tell these stories. And you can reframe your story, you can change your story at any time. And then it's taking those actions, and that's going to ultimately lead to better outcomes. So, do you have any last words to leave the viewers with?
Just thank you so much for creating this space, Tim, and the time to really infuse more positivity and more healthy conversations. I think the world needs that. So just really appreciate you, and thank you so much for those who are watching. I hope that you're able to just pick one thing. I'm a huge believer of take what serves you and leave the rest, and cherry pick what feels right for you. Your intuition really knows what's right for you.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your wealth of wisdom. Thank you for sharing all of that today, and your time and energy. So thank you so much. And where can people find your work? Is it at your website, radhadalal.com? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay, so
my
I'll
website
okay,
and my
perfect. Well,
Instagram, which is at Radha the therapist, but my Instagram's also on my website. So
okay, perfect. I will link that in the show notes. And everyone, just comment below what was your favorite part of the episode. And thank you so much for being on the podcast, Radha. Thank you.
thank you, Tim. So nice to meet you.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you.